Hey nerdy knitters, in this video we're looking at the Picot Bind Off. It's a stretchy decorative bind off that you can use for any shawl pattern. This is what a picot looks like. It adds this decorative little edge to your shawls or to any project where you'd like to put them in. They're really simple to work and they're really simple to adjust. You can change the size of the picots, you can change how many stitches are bound off in between. I'll show you how to do all of that in today's video. But before we jump in, I just want to say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a certified knitting instructor and a knitwear designer with the goal of helping you become a confident, adventurous knitter. So let's get to our tutorial. You'll find full instructions down in the video description box along with some timestamp links if you want to jump to any point in the video. All right, this is really a 4-step process, but we have to start with just a little bit of a setup. I'm going to bind off our first 2 stitches here, because I don't want the picot right at the edge. If you do, then you could put one there, and I'll show you how to work that in a second. Just bind off one, just so I'm not right on the edge. Now, the first thing you do is take the stitch, the last bound off stitch, right there on that needle. You're going to slip it right back purlwise. You're not going to change the stitch mount. Slip it right back to your left needle. And this is how you start your picot. You cast on 2 stitches. Now you can use the cable cast on, where you insert between the 2 and pull it through, or you can use the knit cast on. They're worked the same except the knit cast on goes into the stitch. So whether you want the cable cast on or the knit cast on, both of them will work here. I just prefer the knit cast on because I think it's a little stretchier than the cable cast on. So we insert into that stitch we bound off, pull a new stitch through, but we're not going to drop this bound off stitch off. We're going to put this stitch right on our left needle, just like that. And we're going to repeat that. Insert into that new stitch, wrap, pull it through, put it on our needle. We've cast on 2 stitches, you can see right there. Now the next step for creating the picot is to bind these back off again. So we work them just like a stitch. Work that one, bind it off. There's 1 picot stitch, 2, and there is our little picot. It's hard to see right now, but you'll see after we get some more stitches bound off here. Now I'm going to bind off 2 more stitches in between. So 1, 2, actually let's do 3. Bind off 3. Okay, so you can see, get my needle out of the way, there is that little picot right there. That's a 2-stitch picot, and I bound off 3 stitches. Let's do another one. So we take our last bind off stitch right here, we slip it right back to our left needle, and we cast on 2 stitches by inserting, wrapping just like we're going to knit, but we don't drop a stitch off. Instead, we put that stitch on the needle. And we repeat that again. We're going to cast on 2 stitches. Knit, put it on the needle. And now we bind those stitches off. So we have to knit 2 to bind off. 1 bound off stitch. 2 bound off stitches. There's our picot. Now I'll bind off 3 more. 1, 2, 3. I find it helps to count while you do this, so you remember how many stitches you've bound off. And you can see we have a few little picots. There are some holes underneath. That's just part of the decorative edge. That is a picot. I'm going to finish working these and we can look at them. There, I finished working across the row, and you can see there's our picot edge right there. You can see how stretchy it is, and it adds really decorative edge right there. Now that you see how simple it is to work a picot, we'll look at how easy it is to adjust the size and the distance between each one. But before we do that, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to share it with your friends and subscribe if you like to get nerdy with your knitting. Now, to adjust a picot, all you need to do is cast on more or less stitches depending on how big you'd like it. If you're using fingering weight yarn and you want a large picot, you're going to want to cast on more stitches than I did in the demonstration because I was using really bulky yarn. So 2 stitches was plenty for the picot on this edge. So if you want a larger picot, you cast on more stitches. That's your first step. And then in your second step, you would bind them all off, just like we demonstrated. However many you cast on, that's how many you bind off, and that gives you your picot. The next thing you can adjust is the space between each of those picots, and that is as simple as binding off more or less stitches. If you want them really close together, you bind off just 1 or 2 stitches and work another picot. Remember, you take that last bound off stitch, slide it back to your left needle to use so you can cast on more stitches for the next picot. If you want more space between your picots, remember, the more space you have between them and the less picots you work, the edge will be less stretchy because those extra cast-on stitches give you a lot of extra stretch. So if you don't mind that it's less stretchy and you want just a few picots, bind off more stitches in between each one. It's as simple as that. So don't be scared of trying a picot edge. It's really simple to work. All you have to do is know how to knit, cast on, add a few stitches, and bind them off again. Just be sure to count each step so you know how many stitches you bound off because that can be a little bit tricky. But one key you can look for is that stitch you slip back over. There'll be an extra space between it and the next stitch. So if you're not sure where you are in the bind off, just see how much space there is between the stitches. That stitch that you slipped over to the left needle to start your picot is the first stitch that will be bound off between your picots. It's really as simple as that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to share it with your knitting friends and subscribe if you like to get nerdy with your knitting. And if you want to look at more shawl knitting tips, check out the playlist I've linked right here.